Very good. I will call this meeting to order. It's the Finance Administration Committee and a special meeting of the Board of Directors. Let's see. Today is December the 8th, and it's 1:13 in the afternoon. So let's determine if we have a quorum, Mr. Gentleman.
We'll do chair, and we'll start with Director Williams. Here. Director Gray. Director Deere. Director Alvarez. And Chair Houston.
Here.
So it appears we have a quorum for the committee, but not for the special board meeting.
So with that, you do have the chair and the member of the committee available, so we will move forward. And any public comment?
We have no public comments here in the room, and I'm pointing my attention to the platform to see if there's any hands raised to make a public comment. And I see no hands raised. So it appears we have no public comment at this time, Director.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any presentations?
We have no presentations on the agenda here.
We'll move on to the action calendar, which is item 5A, the approval of minutes.
Okay, so action calendar, we have our acting board secretary, Desiree Quintero, here ready to provide the recommendation for this item. Desiree, please.
Perfect. So for our board meeting minutes, we have brought following minutes that are attached for your consideration. The November 28th, 2022 regular board minutes. We'd like to recommend that to the board.
And when you read the recommendation, did you have one in here?
Yes, the recommendation is that the board approves the November 28th, 2022 regular board minutes.
I would move that, support that, so that it goes forward to the board.
Very good. Thank you. And I concur with Director Williams. So that will go forward.
Okay, fantastic.
Recommendation of approval. Okay, so let's move to the next item, which is 5B. Boy.
Correct, and we have our fiscal year 2022-23 district sponsorship request. And this is with the South Bay Cities Council of Governments 2023 annual conference, which is to be held on Thursday, March 23rd. And our recommendation is to sponsor this in the amount of $2,500. And so I'll bring your attention to package page 10, where the staff report begins. So I'll just kind of review this real quickly. So during the July 2021 regular board meeting, the board approved the district sponsorship budget under the condition that each sponsorship request be brought before the board for advisement. The district has received a sponsorship request from the South Bay COG for their 2023 General Assembly. Staff request the board consider sponsoring this event at the determined sponsorship level. And so with that, there are several sponsorship levels available. The Golden Circle at 10,000, patrons at 7,500, benefactors at 5,000, and the recommended level sponsors at the $2,500 level. In fiscal year 21-22, the district sponsored this event at that same sponsorship level of $2,500. And so I believe we have, help me out here, Desiree, in terms of remaining budget. Okay, here we go. Fiscal impact. So we have a $55,000 budget. With this sponsorship, if approved, would leave a remaining funds of $30,750 for the 2022-23 budget. And of course, with the South Bay COG, they are an enduring partner of ours. They essentially are an extension of the district in certain ways, representing us on our behalf to promote the district programs at various community events, the Educational Center, Environmental Services Center, and many of the wonderful things that the COG does. And so I'm proud to recommend this particular sponsorship. So I'll read the recommendation and we can discuss any questions that you may have. So the recommendation is that the board consider sponsoring the South Bay Cities Council of Governments 2023 Annual Conference to be held Thursday, March 23rd, 2023 in the amount of $2,500. I'm happy to take any questions.
Question?
No questions. I'd just like to say I would recommend that we support this. We have been for as long as I've been on the board, and even before I got on the board, I was a supporter of the COG, so I support moving this forward to the board.
Thank you, Director Williams. Number one, I concur. Number two, even before I was on the board, I've always was a supporter of the COG. This is one of the, actually the best regional events that is put on the South Bay, in my opinion. So I would recommend it moves forward at this level to the board, the full board, $2,500. I don't remember or not, if it says it here, but I know that we have a booth automatically.
Yes.
I know that they have like there's breakfast, there's lunch, there's seats or anything. I don't really concern myself with that, but obviously if depending on the topics of staff, that makes some sense for some staff that want to attend, that might be something that you guys can look at depending on the topics. Last but not least, I do see actually, this sounds like an interesting program because it is the first I'm actually seeing the letter. As if they sent me an email, I haven't read it, but anyway. Our program, the South Bay, leading the way in resilience and adaptability. We'll explore how the South Bay is adapting to the growing impacts of climate crisis and working to create a more resilient future. So quite honestly, I think that that is something hopefully maybe the COG will look at, how can West Basin participate? I have no idea what the programming is, but we should offer Jackie the opportunity that, is she gonna have something on water? Is she gonna have something on some of that type of sustainability, resiliency? I have no idea. But maybe you all can talk to her about that.
Right. I think they had actually asked for a possible speaker at this event.
Good.
And so if that's an item that we could talk about with the full board as a part of this consideration. And whether any of the board members would like to take advantage of that speaker role, or the general manager should, be the representative in that speaking role.
I think what we'll do is let's get it through to the board just for the approval of this, but then, we can talk as they are formulating everything and see what would make sense. But this looks like a great topic, and I think West Basin should be a participant if at all possible.
And I hope my memory is accurate that they did ask for a speaker.
Okay.
I don't have that information in front of me, but I think that's what I recall.
Great. Well, one way or the other, we ask for her consideration in some way, shape, or form, or we actually just offer it, right?
Right.
They're probably still in planning.
Correct.
So with that, you have direction from the committee. Thank you, Director Williams.
Thank you.
Move on to item 5C as in cat.
Okay, so 5C is our fiscal year 2023 community outreach event. And this is a director sponsored item for the El Segundo High School choirs. And so I'll bring your attention to package page 17 for the staff report. And so this happens to be a request of our committee chair, Director Houston, requesting that we consider sponsorship of 3 El Segundo High School choir events, which would be held on Thursday, January 26th of 2023, Monday, March 27th, and Friday, May 5th. And to consider a sponsorship in the amount of $1,000. This particular sponsorship has to meet one of the criterias below, whether it's a speaking opportunity, a district booth or table, or an advertisement promoting district awareness. And in this case, the organizer would comply with that criteria through item C, which is to provide an advertisement promoting district awareness. And I believe it would be a full page advertisement for that item. And it would be provided in each of the 3 events in their event brochure. our program, I'm sorry, the event program. So with that being said, the fiscal impact here, we have a fiscal year budget, and if this is approved, it would, our remaining budget will be $59,500 for the community outreach budget for 2022-23. So let me read the recommendation, and then we can have any questions that you may have. So the recommendation is that the board approve the sponsorship requested by Director Houston for 3 El Segundo High School choir events to be held on Thursday, January 26, 2023, Monday, March 27th, 2023, and Friday, May 5th, 2023, in the total amount of $1,000. Happy to take any questions.
Question, I would approve this.
Director Williams, and the one thing that when this came to my attention, I thought it was fascinating because it says that the El Segundo Choirs will be premiering at Carnegie Hall in New York in April of 2023. So I think that is awesome, and I'm happy that we are entertaining, supporting them in some way, shape, or form. So that I would recommend approval to the board.
All right, very good.
You, Greg. All right, next, our information calendar, item 6A.
All right, so that brings us to our first item, and we have our principal accountant, Wendy Nakamura, here to provide our fiscal year 2022 financial audit and annual comprehensive financial report.
Do you mind if I say a couple words?
I do not mind at all. Please do. We'd love to hear from you, Mary Ann, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Houston and Director Williams, committee members. I did want to also welcome, we do have our auditors online today virtually, so they are here with us. We have the firm itself is Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott, RANS for short. And we have the partner on hand. His name is Scott Mano. We have Garden Duran, who is the manager, and we have Laura of Rizzo, who is the supervisor. As Greg started to say, we do have Wendy Nakamura here today with us, our principal accountant, and Wendy is the lead and manages the budget process. So we're really happy to have her presenting with you today. She's going to lead off with her presentation, and then we'll ask our auditors to also they have a presentation within the packet as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Good afternoon, Chair Houston, Director Williams, and member of the committee. I will be presenting fiscal year 2022 financial audit and also annual comprehensive financial report. It starts on page 27 of your board package. Government Code 53891 requires each local agency to submit the annual financial transaction to the state controller's office within 7 months after the closing of the fiscal year. The financial report are due February 1st, 2023, and the data must be from audited financial statement. Roger Anderson, Madeline, and Scott are a certified public accounting firm since 1948 is the engagement firm which complete the fiscal year 22 audit for West Basin. As Mary Ann mentioned, Laura, the lead of the audit engagement team, will discuss the audit detail later. The data from audited financial statement, West Basin staff updated annual comprehensive financial report, which you can find between page 38 and page 153 of your board package. This report including 3 sections. Section 1 presenting general information about West Basin history, our operation, our project, and our finances. Section number 2, including the independent auditor's report, management discussion and then analysis, which is drafted by West Basin staff. Also including in section number 2 is fiscal year 22 financial statement, notes to the financial statement. Section number 3, including tables, shows 10-year history of West Basin water sales, revenue, and expenses. are some major financial activities for fiscal year 2022, which I would like to report. I'm on page 28 of the board package. West Basin had a negative change in net position of $74 million in fiscal year 2022. This is due to the write-off of $61 million ocean desal project and the $9.2 million settlement payment towards the standby charges. The lawsuit filed in 2017, and then we settled in fiscal year 2022. West Basin had a net asset of $2.6 million for other post-employment benefit account. This account is for retiree medical account. West Basin had a net pension asset of $1.4 million for the first retirement program, and then also net pension asset of $339,000 for the PARS retirement program. West Basin's total potable water and monitoring revenue was $175 million. The expenses was $143 million, resulted in net revenue of $32 million. West Basin's water recycling revenue was $30 million. The expenses were $43 million. West Basin issued a 2022 refunding revenue bonds for the amount of $24 million in February 2022 to refund the 2012 A revenue bond. West Basin entered into a swap agreement with the Citibank in 2004. The fair market value of the swap was negative $370,000 as of June 30, 2022. There is a gain of $585,000 from the fiscal year 21 evaluation, which at fiscal year 21, we have a negative $955,000. It's implement Gatsby number 87 leases in fiscal year 2022. In fiscal year 2022, West Basin's overall debt coverage is 1.47. The legal coverage is 1.15. We budgeted 1.7, and then we ended at 1.47. West Basin staff is ready to submit the annual report to the Government Finance Officer Association for award of excellence in financial reporting. West Basin has been receiving this award from GFOA every year since 2006. This is the highest award our government agency can receive. Last but not the least, I would like to extend my appreciation to our auditing firm for their hard work and the attention to details for the audit. Special thanks to Laura, who is the lead of the audit. This is conclude of my presentation. I'm ready to answer any question you may have. Thank you. So now I will introduce Laura, who is online right now. Will give you a short presentation to let you know the details about the audit.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Laura Arbizu. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate all your help with helping us complete this audit as well, and all of the finance team. I just wanted to go through a quick overview of our procedures of the audit for the district. Can we go to the next page, please? So an overview of our responsibilities as the auditors for the district is to do the audit of the financial statements in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and the state minimum audit requirements for special districts. As part of the audit, we planned to express an opinion as whether management financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So with this part of it, we always like to emphasize that they are management's financial statements. We come in and review the information, and we also can only provide reasonable assurance and not absolute that there are no material misstatements that were found as part of our procedures. As a result of everything that we performed, we issued an unmodified opinion within the financial statements, and that is what we call a clean opinion. So we found nothing of significance that would make us change that from unmodified to something else. Next page, please. The audit process. So the audit is essentially split into two separate sections. We review internal controls over financial reporting for different areas like billings, cash receipts, cash and investments. We also extract some data to perform testing over accounts payable and your payroll disbursements. We look over financial closing and reporting, and as well as controls over capital assets, long-term debt. And we test specifically controls over your cash disbursements, purchasing and contract payroll, and common controls over multiple areas, which are bank reconciliations, journal entries, and other items that cover multiple areas. Next, please. Once we are done with the interim or the first part of internal control testing, we do the year-end audit procedures. And this is where we conduct a detailed audit of the financial records or the numbers that are being presented in your financial statements. We review various documentations, perform inquiries with staff about and ask for support for the transactions and events that are listed in your financial statements. We also confirm cash and investment balances with third parties, and we perform analytical procedures over different areas like your revenues, expenditures, review and evaluate any significant changes that we see from current year to prior year. We also go through and read board minutes. Lastly, we assist the district in preparing your annual report or your ACFR. Next, please. In the current year, like Wendy mentioned earlier, the significant change was the adoption of GASB 87 leases. This caused a relatively minor change in your financial statements, as the leases in place didn't have a significant impact in them. And that was really the only thing that changed significantly from prior years. Next. And then completing our process. Our independent auditor's report, like I mentioned earlier, shows an unmodified opinion, which is the clean or best opinion that we can provide when doing our audit procedures. And as you'll see in our report, it states that, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the district as of 6/30/2022. And next page, I think that might be the end of the letters. So there are two communications that we have sent over. Is the SAS 114 letter, which is a letter to the board, just stating that we had no uncorrected misstatements to report. There was no difficulty with working with the district, and we had no disagreements with management. We also have provided you with the report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters based on audit financial statements. This was performed in accordance with government auditing standards. And this one will say that we had no deficiencies to report over internal controls and no matters of non-compliance that we identified as part of our procedures. Next. That, I believe, was the last of it. So any questions that you guys might have for us, anything else that you would like to discuss?
You're muted.
Muted?
We need to turn on the.
Oh.
There we
You
go.
weren't picked up on.
Now you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, sorry, I'm here. No, I was asking if this was the same firm that has done this work for us before, which I thought it was, and Marianne said it was
The third year.
third year. Okay, great. And I don't, you didn't bring up anything glaring that we needed to be aware of or be addressed, right, from this audit.
Correct.
That's
Wendy did
correct.
point out the significant items in the beginning, Laura, like the write-off of the desal plant, which is significant.
Yep.
But yet, it, was expected and voted upon. And of course, the settlement that we had, that was also recorded this year. Those are significant items, but again, reported on.
Right. And then other than that, there are no real issues that needed to be addressed. Because I know in the past, there'd been, minor things that had been brought up on process, et cetera, which I know have been addressed over the years. So it looks like we are in even better position as far as the auditors are concerned.
Yes, would you agree, Laura?
And
correct. Yeah, like I said, based on everything that we did, there was nothing that we felt the need to disclose to the board.
very good, very good. So, with that, I mean, this is just an information item, obviously, right?
It is. And as Wendy indicated, we will be filing shortly this report. And so, and looking forward to hopefully getting another award this year.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you to Laura. Is it Laura, right?
Yes, correct.
Laura and Scott, thank you for being here and for your work with West Basin. We do appreciate it. And I know that, well, and our staff has, been here a long time. And so of course, they know the ins and outs of West Basin. So we do appreciate the cooperation that you have been providing on both sides. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Happy holidays.
Here you go.
Thank you, team.
Okay, so we will move to 6C as in cat, right? Oops, I jumped one, didn't I? 6B.
6B.
Boy, monthly financial report.
Correct. So we'll have Mary Ann Rexroad, our manager of finance, provide our monthly financial report.
Thank you, Greg. And good afternoon again, Chairman Houston and Director Williams. I am going to present item 6B. We do have, this is required each month per our admin code to present the various financial reports, which include the monthly demands, our cash and investments, as well as our water sales, and then the director's conference and expense report, and lastly, executive management and staff travel expense report. I'm going to start off on page, let's see, is 168 of your packet. This is your monthly demands. This covers all the payments that the district made on behalf of its operations for the month of November. The total demands for the month were 15.8 million. There were no significant or out of the ordinary items to note, but with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions I may have.
Any questions, Director Williams?
No, thank you.
I don't have any at this time. Mayor.
Moving on to the second report, which I believe should be a handout for you. This is our cash and investment report. This is as of November 30th, 2022. Sorry, we could not get into the packet for you with the information takes a while to put together, and so we were able to give it to you as a handout today. So that,
Is that the one you just gave us?
yeah, should look like.
Perfect. Go ahead.
All right, so as I mentioned, this is as of November 30th, 2022. Your portfolio has 71.6 million. Just looking to the right of the page, you'll see that we're very well diversified with the 22.5% of our assets invested in U.S. Treasuries, 18% in U.S. agencies, and 22.8% within the investment pools, which include the California class and LAIF. So moving on to the next page, this is a slide that does show you the credit quality. You'll see at the bottom of the page, we have about 27% that is invested within AAA rated bonds, as well as our investments, and 42.5% in AA rated investments. So again, very high quality portfolio we have. Moving on to the next page is the maturity distribution. And just to point out that, you know, with the rising rates in the interest rates that we're seeing, that you can see that the majority of our portfolio is in the 1 year and less, which makes about $45 million. Again, that's so we can reinvest as rates are rising. So that allows us about 60% of the portfolio we should see in the next year be reinvested, hopefully in some higher interest rates. And moving on to the next page, this is your transaction ledger. Want to point out a couple of things here. As you may recall, back in September, we brought an item to the board about one of our community banks that wasn't able to meet the requirement of the policy. And so we were directed staff to go back and Margaret negotiate a rate. And so you'll see on that first line, it's kind of small to see, but the purchase is with the City First Bank. We invested those funds, $750,000 through the IntraFi network. So it is all covered through FDIC insurance. That's very safe. And we did get a rate of 1.5%. So we're happy to report that. And then another thing I wanted to point out is that on the following page, you'll see that we did have our other small community bank where we reported last month that was not able to meet that particular requirement. And so we have requested those funds back. We have reinvested those within the California class investment pool, which I'm happy to say is earning, as of yesterday, about 4% in that portfolio. So it's very good. But we've reached out several times with One United, and we've been told that the individual that we need to work with, she's been out unexpectedly, but they do know that we want to talk to them and then hopefully be able to work something out with them. And Margaret would be then reporting back hopefully next month. We get some action there. And then on the next, let's see, 9 pages is the holdings report. I won't go through them all with you, but this is every single security that you have in your portfolio. And that's followed by then the glossary of terms, which is the very end of the report. But with that, I'll just pause and see if you have any questions on the cash investment report.
No, thank you.
Well, normally we would have a handout for our water sales report, but since we're not going to be billing out until Monday, we don't have that for you. But I did want to take this opportunity to report back on an item that we discussed last month, and that was with our recycled water sales and the decline that we're seeing a bit in our disinfectant tertiary sales. So after the meeting, staff did meet with our operations staff, and we worked together to identify some of the sites that we saw some of the decreases that had occurred from prior years. Operations staff did reach out to those particular sites and did find that talking to those, the operators of those sites, some of the reasons for those declines. And one of the largest items have to do with construction happening at those sites. I believe they are called modifications, and you probably see this on the E&O report that they do an update every month. But those made up of a large majority of the reasons why we see a decline from our budget with those particular sales for irrigation. The good note is once they complete that construction, hopefully then they turn back on the recycled water, and we'll see those numbers start to rise as well. Of course, some of those modifications could mean that there is some loss of irrigation use if they're being replaced, let's say, by artificial turf or something to that effect. Another reason that we also noted was that some of the users did mention that it was just easier for them to manage their whole system, potable and recycled, on the same basis. So if they reduced it down to 2 days of watering or turned it off during the upper feeder shutdown that happened in September, then it was just easier for them to do the same for both systems. So there's a little bit of that being involved. And we did hear back from one particular customer that they're just managing their water use a little bit better. Cooler weather, they're not using as much. But I did also find out from our operations staff that they are communicating to our customers that the recycled water use is not covered under the same restrictions as those that apply to our potable water. So they are communicating with them. Frank speaks to them individually by email. So, and I think there is a plan also to communicate more and get more conservation messaging, meaning the water is not restricted to those conservation messaging for recycled water users. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
No, thank you.
Thank you for that update, and maybe just keep us apprised, every other month or so how that's going. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to, which would be the last report today would be, it's going to be on page 176. This is the director's conference and travel expense on page 175. We had total spend of just under 20,000 out of a budget of about 75,000, remaining about 55,000 on the directors. Just want to note that for the month of December, it does not include the credit card statements. Those were just received recently. And so if we can get those in before the board meeting, we will update this, but if not, then it'll be reflected next month. And on page 176 is the executive management and staff traffic expense report. And again, those do not include the most recent credit card statements for the month of November. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, Rick Williams?
No, thank you.
I have no questions.
If I may, I'd like to just highlight one item in the demand list on page 205, which is page 169. There is one item there that indicates a payout of 200,000 to PCL Construction. This is in conjunction with the confidential settlement and release agreement. And so that certainly is not typical, but I believe District General Counsel will be updating the board, on the status of that settlement discussions. We have not already been updated.
Very good. Any questions, Rick Williams?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Let's see here. Moving on, it looks like 6C, right? Am I on that right?
Yes. Yes, and so Mary Ann will continue with a discussion of our proposed budget calendar for fiscal year 2023-24. So Mary Ann, please continue.
Thank you, Greg. Margaret wishes she could be here today, but I will take this item for her. Each year, West Basin prepares and adopts a budget that includes the financial resources needed through its rates and charges to meet the near-term goals and objectives set by the board. For the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget, there will be a series there'll be several key decision points that will impact not only the upcoming fiscal year, but also the operating results of future fiscal years as well. Some of these decision points include water sales, both recycled and potable. Certainly the conservation efforts in the drought have changed the way that we budget. And so we'll continue to look at ways to improve the way we budget in those areas. The impact from a change in revenue stream, as we just talked about, we had a lawsuit that we settled recently for the standby charge. So there are going to be some reduced revenues based on that settlement and eventually termination of those revenues. We'll also be looking at the cost of maintaining West Basin's current infrastructure. As we know, we have a CIP program, and we'll be looking at what we need to construct in the coming years and how we will be paying for those projects, as well as all of our other activities that we do here at the district. The staff intends to share the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget through a series of workshops to focus on these key decision points and other budget considerations that will assist in the development of the proposed rates and charges. On a high level calendar, this would include budget priorities that would be discussed and presented in between January and March timeframe, coming back in April, where we would have workshops that would include the decisions on water sales, program expenses, and also CIP as well. And we hope to conclude then the process in May, where we would present the final proposed rates and charges as well as the budget. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you.
I guess my only thing here, Mary Ann, would be the fact that it looks like you guys really want to push a lot of workshops in April from this, if I'm reading this right.
We haven't determined the number of workshops. These are the ideas and the things we want to focus on. But Margaret will come back with a much more precise schedule, if you will. They'll have the dates, and once we can, work those out also with your schedules, and then we'll have a better idea of how many workshops that'll be.
Would there be any consideration for April that we should be sensitive to?
Here's what I'm thinking, because I think actually this discussion probably needs to be at the full board. So all 5 directors can, of course, give their input on how we handle the budget this cycle. I'm a little concerned that, yeah, we can give input January through March, but then April, it's everything's on the table, and lots of workshops to try and sift through, which just is going to be probably difficult. And then, of course, between May and June, we got to approve some things. So it seems like it needs to probably be spread out a little bit better,
Provide
elongated.
that feedback to Margaret.
I guess also knowing that in the January through March timeframe, whether you have a standalone type of workshop or it's on the FNA or at the FNA. And obviously, and this is why the board, I think, needs to talk about it as a whole collectively. So should probably just talk about it on the 19th. But try and ease some of it. It seems like, I don't, this is just me speaking here, but if, for example, like, I understand what you said, discuss budget priorities at points in January through March. So obviously that would probably be at this committee, but not every director even comes to the committee meeting. So I suppose that if a board member has something specific they want to address, they need to, I guess they could send it to the general manager to bring it to your attention. They could probably tell one of the committee members, I would like this to be brought up at your meeting. I can't be there. Or at a board meeting, they can always tell us what they need. But my point is this, each of us has to give you a little bit more input so it doesn't get crammed into, 2 months before it's ready to be approved. So that's just my first reaction. Yeah, Mary Ann, how it's been the last couple of years, right? We kind of tweaked this a lot. And I know that different directors are really focused on the financials. So anyway, why don't we talk about it at the meeting on the 19th? Give you a little better input. I think if I was going to do something, I'd want to start maybe looking at workshops by February and, into March. And that way there's some gaps, because that's going to be easier to hope on you all too. And it's, or if it's at the FNA, fine, whatever we end up deciding. But I just don't want to think that April is just going to have all this on the calendar. That's probably going to be just too much with everything else that we all have to do with committees. My first reaction, Director. So I guess we talk about it. I think we just talk about it the 19th again, see what everyone thinks. Yeah.
This is really good feedback. So with that input, this particular information item should go into the information calendar on the
Yes.
19th rather than receiving 5.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we will do that.
Yeah, just to have a quick discussion on that.
And that was the purpose as well, is to start the conversation, now. So that way we could begin to plan for January going forward. And so thank you for allowing this to go forward to the full board.
And then one last thing, I see you do have right now, you're saying May present the final budget and rates and charges for adoption, but normally that does go to June, right? Is that how we?
Last couple of years it has, but prior to that, we were bringing and adopting the budget as early as May.
Okay.
We did hear from our customers a number of years ago that it's easier for them when they know those rates and charges sooner than later.
Okay,
So, it's always our hope that we can adopt in May, but of course, as you mentioned, there's a lot to be discussed.
okay, great, yeah. Just, and for me too, knowing that, this is not a drop dead date if need be. I mean, we have till June to get it all finalized. Very good, so let's talk about it on the 19th.
Okay, and if I may just make a side comment, rates and charges. For those who may be interested, including our committee here, we have our next rate increase that's kicking in with Metropolitan on January 1. That'll be translated through the rates and charges that were approved by the board back in June. And so our customers will start to see that incremental increase in the bill when those bills roll through, I believe, in February.
Yeah, February 10th, I believe, will be when they'll first see January sales.
Right, and so our finance department is communicating with our customers to let them know that, those rate increases are going to be kicking in.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I think we're getting to the last item here. It's 6D as in dog.
And that brings us to our update on the LA County Public Works West Coast Basin Barrier Project. And so Barkev Mazurlian, our Executive Manager of Engineering and Operations, is here to provide a report out. I believe this was in response to the questions that you raised, Chair Houston, in the last meeting about the status of the county's efforts. And so Barkev is pleased to provide that report. So Barkev, please.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, Chairman Houston, Director Williams. As Greg mentioned, this would be an update to the county's projects, the County Public Works. The staff report starts on page 179, but we have a presentation that's attached. So we can go ahead and flip over to the page 182, 183, actually, to start the presentation. We can start off with a little bit of background. You know this information, so we can skip if I'm taking too long about this, but the barrier, County Public Works built the barrier back in the early 1950s in response to massive groundwater production and depletion of the groundwater levels down during the Second World War. And the barrier was put in place to prevent encroachment of the seawater into the groundwater basin and bumping up the chlorides, the salinity of the groundwater. So in response, the barrier system was built 9 miles as the crow flies, or 11 miles if you look at the alignment of pipeline that stretches from Palos Verdes all the way to LAX. In addition to a pipeline, over 150 injection wells and a bunch of monitoring wells comprise this injection system. And at the time, the water was all imported water taken from one of the feeders, the West Coast Basin feeder in El Segundo, to punch in that import water into the barrier system. And then, of course, over the years, we built our recycled water program and started injecting advanced treated recycled water from West Basin to that system. On page 184, you'll see the 3 different barrier systems that the county has. The project that we're going to talk about today is on the West Coast Barrier System, which we supply recycled water to. On page 185, just as a reminder that this is a huge collaborative effort between 3 agencies. County Public Works, they own the injection system and they operate it. WRD is the water master for the basin that manage the groundwater basin. They're the ones saying how much water we should inject. And West Basin is the producer of the recycled water, the advanced treated recycled water. And over the different phases of the expansion at Richard Little, we've increased and bumped up how much recycled water we could and do push into the injection system. So what's this project? If you go to page 186, the actual project is called the West Coast Basin Barrier Project Unit 13. It's a project that the county is administrating. And, we refer to it as a rehab project, but ultimately what it ended up being is a replacement of a bunch of wells, a bunch of injection wells, because over the years, they've clogged up, they've had reduction in the capacity and the amount that they could inject. They basically got to the end of their useful life. And so the project entails a few things. One is abandoning 9 of those wells and replacing them with new ones in the general area in Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach area. And also putting in 2 new injection wells in that area as well to basically increase the integrity of the barrier. They also they added 1 more monitoring well. The monitoring wells they're there to kind of indicate what are the levels of the groundwater, what's the water quality too, and give that pieces of information to the county and WRD for continuous analysis. There's an element of also communication. The telemetry system to each of these wells have to put in place to allow operational efficiency and controls for the county. So you can see a map here. There's a better map as attachment A on page 181. And if we can go to that map for a little bit, because what we could do here is show the area in question. You may see a yellow label there on top. That's the new monitoring well. The red dots are existing or were existing wells that basically were put offline. And the blue dots next to them are the replacement wells. And you see a couple of blue dots in between some of the existing. Those are the new wells at 5X1, this 6E1. And they're all along the alignment of Valley Drive. They don't take up too much space, but putting them together and constructing them is a process. So let's go back to page 186. We can see that the budget for the project was $16.75 million. They did get some grant funding from the state, $7 million grant funding. We can switch over to the next page of the project. Last month, the county indicated that the project was certified complete on October 13, mid-October. All done. The wells themselves were constructed. Construction on the wells themselves were done in May, but there were all these other little items here and there: landscaping, telemetry, connections, communications, stuff that lingered a little bit. And since they had the wells constructed, they've been very carefully bringing them online slowly. Again, the system is old, and hydraulically they have to be very careful in how they manage the system and how they operate the system. So as they brought wells online, we've been able to push more into the system. The way it works is that the county comes in and we communicate with them several times every month about how much we could push towards them and how much we're able to produce in terms of recycled water. The rest of it is makeup imported water. So over the last 6 months, since July, since the beginning of the fiscal year, July, we were at 4 MGD, million gallons per day. We've went up to 7. We're close to meeting their target right now, which is around 10. Their target for last month was a little over 10, and we were at 9.6. So that's the good news. We've been able over the last few months to kind of ramp up to where we need to be. We had to kind of lower it a little bit in some segments because of some repairs that we had to do, some cleaning of the membranes that we had to do. You're going to see some items coming up about purchasing more membranes to kind of keep that flow around 10 million gallons per day. But what this means, you see some numbers there at the bottom table. The project was more about maintaining capacity, taking the old ones out and putting new injection wells in. But with the new wells, you can see that we can, our expectation is that you could bump up the capacity anyway from 250,000 gallons per day to 1.65 million gallons per day. So all good news there for us. In the next couple of slides, they're just photos that we borrowed from a presentation that the county did, showing some before and after photos. There's a couple of sites on page 188 and 2 more sites on page 189. The bottom line from we look at these photos is that you really, for the average person passing by, they really won't notice these facilities that are there. They're below ground. But again, the project's complete, and we're ramping up on our end, or continue to ramp up and keep as much production as we can keep on our end on the Bear. That concludes our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Any questions, Director Williams?
No, thank you. Good presentation. Go ahead.
I would say thank you as well, and thanks for the update. So good to know that basically it's done, it's complete. Now, of course, it's the ramping up on their end for the most part, right? Really, one question I guess for me would be, because you mentioned how the system itself is old and antiquated or what have you. So it's one thing to replace wells, et cetera, but then the overall management system or what have you, how do they look at that for the future? Is that something that they have to eventually replace, or,
It's
rig or something? What do they do?
right. It's a balance for them, similar to it is for balance for us about how much we replace and invest for our facilities. It's the same for them. As you can see here, they got 153 wells. And they've only replaced 9 of them here, $16.7 million, which, so it is quite an investment to kind of make these improvements, but they do have a program, and they, in addition to this project, they have one similar one for another barrier system. So, answer your question, we can expect that they will do more of this moving forward. Installing this telemetry system is a good thing for them because it allows more control to the information that's being collected and more control to how they're operating the well. So that's an operational for them. One of the things that we want to continue to talk to them about this management of the system is what can we do to increase the percentage of recycled water versus imported? Because historically it's been 75% recycled water, 25% imported. And they've told us that they'd like it to keep some of the imported because of the hydraulics and the sensitivity of the system and the way they manage the system. Basically, puts them, prefer to have some potable water. We prefer to have more recycled water pushing through, obviously. So that is an area where we see that we need to kind of work with them and see what improvements can we put in place to do more of the recycle, less of the imported.
Very good. Well, thank you, Barkev, because I think that helps me understand better and us understand better because, well, as you do know, that there's residents out there and folks who maybe don't understand the nuance of this and would all be asking the simple question for most people is how come we can't just do all recycled? And obviously there is more to it than that, not just what we can produce and what they're willing to take, but if it's certain sensitivities in the system, et cetera, et cetera. And now, of course, the bigger question will be when, how many years would we be where the system is in tune enough to do it? And, or do they put in more wells? Do they need more wells? All this stuff, right? But I think it's good that we need to understand kind of where we're at and that cooperation. And knowing too, that nothing's gonna happen overnight when it comes to the rehab and replacement along that barrier.
And that's on their end from the well standpoint, and on our end, we have to kind of look at one of the things on our end is the microfiltration capacity. We've had 2 of our microfiltration systems put offline because of end of year. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, phase 2 and phase 3 were put offline. So that diminished the amount of capacity we have microfiltration, and been thinking about replacing those. And so there are things on our end that could push us all the way up to what we're permitted at 17.5. We can't get there right now. But if we wanted to get there, we had to invest a lot on our end. So there's both on West Basin sides and on the county side, investments that could be done to kind of bump that up and take it further.
Well, thank you. And I know that this is the kind of information that would go into our strategic planning as well, and understanding, where we need to put investments. So I do appreciate it. And of course, it's in this document, so we can look at it later and the public has it as well. So thank you very much, Barkev.
Question for you, Director.
Yes, sir.
Would you prefer this to be a receive and file or to bring this
Oh,
forward?
no, this is receive and file.
Receive and file.
Oh, yeah. Information to have and help answer questions and understanding here. Okay, so with that, we have no closed session today. Director's comments and future agenda items, Director Woodland.
I don't thank you, just how we ended the previous meeting. Same information.
Okay, very good. All right, well, with that, my only comments are also that some great reports. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone bearing with us as we cram all the committee meetings in this month for the holidays. And, with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yep.